Okay, so football administration has been in the talking points this week with the FA deciding, alongside the Premier League, to scrap FA Cup replays. So it's a good idea. I've got some programmes from the first season of the Premier League. I've got some FA Cup programmes, including an FA Cup replay programme, and I have a article in another football magazine discussing the Super League way back in the 60s. Yes. So it's kind of nice to get the football history out. Now, I've chosen three programmes for this video to look at in the sports memorabilia. So at the moment, obviously, the FA Cup is the big one. Now, I've got a West Ham programme where they play Aldershot FC, because Aldershot Town haven't existed at this point because Aldershot went bust the season later, and that is a FA Cup third round replay programme. Now, a lot of clubs have said we're going to lose out on this revenue. Now, Aldershot ultimately did unfortunately go under at the end of the following season. They went bust at the end of the 91-92 season and reformed as the Aldershot Town we see today. But it's interesting, third round replay. So this is a FA Cup replay that West Ham had to play against Aldershot. Here we go. They're in their talking points. The third round of the FA Cup focused sharp attention again on the controversial FIFA edict to stamp out the so-called professional fouls. They're even discussing controversy surrounding rule changes. That's something else we've seen a lot. This is a distorted picture. How ironic is it that the English game is currently riddled with red cards at a time when we're being hailed as the fairest footballing nation in the world? Another bit of irony there. The replay record. If you're looking for good omens tonight, take heart from the fact that 31 years since West Ham last lost an FA Cup replay at Upton Park. They lost in 1960 to Huddersfield Town 5-1 in a replay. That's interesting. What about Ludo? Without wishing to distract from the quality of the two goalkeepers selected, Neville Southall for Everton and David Seaman for Arsenal, Ludek Michalowsko can consider himself somewhat unfortunate not to be selected for the Football League squad that is facing the Italian League representative side Naples tonight. So they had, that's mad. So that's talking about testimonial friendly matches, but it's interesting. So FA Cup replays no more, so you won't get a programme like this that says FA Cup third round replay. Of course, the Premier League had a big part to play in the FA Cup replays getting scrapped, and that's the old Premier League logo there, and that's from the first season of the Premier League. And look, there's a lovely young Ian Wright, who obviously played in the FA Cup final replay. But we have to go back 30 years prior to this. Oh yes, we have to go back to the mid-60s. Forget Super League talk. Now, it's been 3 years since the European Super League debacle that we saw on our news screens and on our TV screens and on the internet back in 2021. But talk about a European Super League goes back to the 1960s. So I thought I'll cover the Premier League and the FA Cup and losing replays. But let's actually have a look at what they say about Super League back in 1966. Yes. So England had just won the World Cup. Super League could ruin football. There will be no Super League in the foreseeable future. Forget all the talk. This is what they were saying in 66. Anybody inside or outside football thinking in terms of a so-called Super League can hardly be aware of what keeps professional football alive in this country. Once you remove promotion and relegation from football, the whole reason for the game is removed. That's this writer's thoughts on things. Promotion and relegation is its lifeblood, and any Super League, whether European or British, would have to be self-contained because its members would be chosen by population and spectator potential. That is what Super League exponents at the time declared. Even talk about compiling membership of any league on this basis alone is about as meaningless as the phrase coming from behind. The Football League Management Committee some years ago produced a document called Pattern of Football. It recommended, among other things, an increase in the number of clubs promoted and relegated and an increase in the number of clubs in the league. I believe by the mid-60s the Football League was at 92 clubs, so that ultimately didn't happen. But it was recommended that more clubs go up and down between the divisions. The management committee studied the problem for 2 years before making these recommendations. The whole basis of their thinking was that competition is essential. Notice, competition is essential. Nor did they overlook the fact that the Football League is now almost a national institution. Yeah, it beat Rugby League in the end as the most popular professional sport in the country by some mile, in part because England won the World Cup, which plays a great part in the social life of this country in a variety of ways, in addition to the entertainment outlet clubs provide on the field of play. Association football beat Rugby League earlier on than this, and then established its dominance because of England winning the World Cup. That's basically what that's hinting at with the lifeblood of communities, etc., etc. Even though in the 50s, Odsal did have a Challenge Cup final with over 100,000 fans in attendance. So there was a battle for people's money at the turnstiles. It is not the time that people responsible for administration of the game, both at national and local level, should be given some credit for knowing something about the problems which we have faced. Or have to be faced, shall I say. It is surely apparent that they are vitally interested and concerned in the success of association football. We would ask you to remember that in recent years there's been a constant outpouring of criticism and advice aimed at the Football League. Nothing's changed. Honestly, nothing's changed there. This must never be stifled because a large part of the enjoyment of football is contained in the differing views and opinions it engenders both on and off the field. Nevertheless, the success of the England team in the World Cup competition has surely proved beyond question that the league system can and does produce world-class players. Debatable in the 70s and 80s where England were not very good at international level. Following the 1970 World Cup, England didn't appear at a World Cup in the 70s. The clubs at all levels of the league are aware of their problems, of their faults, and of the challenge which immediately faces them in this modern world. Now, talking about European football, I've got this 20 years of the Champions League. So the Champions League comes along at the same time as the Premier League is formed in 1992. UEFA rebrand it, and it's in this period they bring in group stages. So, it's very interesting looking at the memorabilia collection, actually how vitally important it is that we actually have the discussion about the Champions League, the FA Cup. But of course, this European Super League talk has been going on since the mid-60s. The fact is, the European Super League 3 years ago, almost to the day, on the same weekend in April, we had this disaster of a PR stunt by 12 clubs to try and form their own little breakaway competition, and it failed within 48 hours. Yeah, it was 3 years ago, almost to the day. And that little attempt is the closest we've come to a European Super League, but there were discussions back in the mid-60s. So this Super League keeps rearing its head. And what was vital in that article, what we read in that article, was that promotion and relegation is vital to the competition aspect and the product that we see on the field. So I found that very, very interesting. I know I quickly talked about FA Cup replays, the rise of the Premier League and the formation of what is now the Champions League, the former European Cup, and of course all the restructuring of that. And we can look at the history and go through every single one of these. I can't find my FA Cup final programme, which is frustrating, but that also was from 2002, so that was 22 years ago. But there's a lot of history in this memorabilia, and it's vitally important that we look back at history and go, they were right. The Super League back in the 60s never got off the ground, and it takes till Arsene Wenger comes along in the 90s at Arsenal, yes, Arsenal again, where Super League talk returns, and then UEFA decide to buckle and give the clubs a group stage in the Champions League. So, yeah, it's very, very interesting. I thought we'll have a quick look. I was actually going to go through all the memorabilia and discuss stuff, but finding those three individual programmes in the collection and looking at them going, first season of the Premier League, FA Cup replay from the third round, and back in the 60s talk about a European Super League. It's it's very, very interesting. So there we go. Thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts in the comments section below. I know it's a slightly different video, and we're discussing like memorabilia. I will go through all this memorabilia collection in time at the end of the season before the Euros kick off. But I thought it was interesting when I was organising it that one of the articles is about European Super League back from 1966. So there we go. Thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts in the comments section below, and I'll have some more content for you guys very, very soon.